Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast. Happy 2025. I know that you've been listening to some episodes in 2025 already, but this is the first one we're actually recording in 2025. We did bring up that we were recording the other ones in 2024, so I'm sure you're across it, but that's okay. Today, we're going to be having a lot of fun and doing a concept sandbox episode, which is kind of an interesting idea. We have a lot of fun with those, but before we get into any of that, we've got to check how the team is going. So, Danette, you were first on the call. So do you want to tell us how your off-season has been over the Christmas and sort of holiday break?
So I had a lovely Christmas holiday break. My brother Eric flew in from the States with our niece and got to hang out with the kids and my parents for Christmas. And then I've been at home most of the time, and we've got 3 little baby hares, one which is about maybe 2 weeks old, so it's tiny, very, very cute. Also had a close encounter with a brown when I was collecting eggs a couple of weeks ago. That woke me up big time. Anyway, both of us survived, so that was a good thing too.
That is good. And for people that haven't been tuning in since the beginning, a brown is a brown snake. So it's and if you're not from Australia and you think, oh, brown snake doesn't sound that harmless, just brown snake. They're pretty, they can be a little intense. So well done, Danette, avoiding that slithery friend. John, how have you been? How was the off-season for you?
It was good, Jess. Prior to Christmas was sort of work around the house, finishing some painting. Yes, there is a saga there. It's not quite finished, but the visibility from the street is good enough for my wife, so happy days. I don't care after that. And then, went up to Brisbane and spent some time with daughter and grandson up there and her partner. So that was really good. And then back at work.
Well, that's great to hear. And you know what they say, John, no paint, no gained, I think. So hopefully you've gained something from that.
That was bad.
Kicking off 2025 like that.
It doesn't get your sound effects, that's for sure.
Well, yes. The less just staying on that pun, the better. Let's jump right over to Graham. Graham, how was your off-season? How was your holiday break?
I think we should just finish now, Jess. Let's finish on a high. My break was good, thank you. 2025 already. By the way, folks, if you are watching / listening to this thinking it's still 2024, then yeah. Exactly. Brown snakes, brown's such a safe colour. I'm always reminded, I don't know why. One, I'm always reminded when we encounter one that I'm terrified of them and I really do need to move to Canada. And 2, I'm reminded of an old advertisement for a rental car company. I think it was Avis. Once upon a time when I believe they were the second largest car rental company in North America. And their motto, tagline, slogan, whatever you want to call it, was something along the lines of "we're number 2, so we try harder." I'm not sure how that translates into an Eastern Brown. Not sure that I want to know. Things got really weird really quickly, so nothing's changed.
We do have a photo. So I took a photo when it came out of the hen shed. So we will post it on the links for the podcast so people who are overseas can see what an Eastern Brown looks like.
Well, yeah, actually, if you jump on the YouTube, I will put that up right now so you can have a look at that photo if you're watching it. And if you're not watching it on YouTube, head over there. It's a great viewing experience. We have little photos appearing, apparently. I was going to say, Graham, we should have started this podcast by saying we're recording this in 2026 and really pretended like we've had some ability to travel back in time through the power of magical learning. That would have been really good. Look, and you know what? All these ideas come from us being a little bored over the period, I'm sure. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, today we're going to be doing a concept sandbox. Now, concept sandboxes are where we take 2 simultaneous conversations, one about a fantasy world and one about a real sort of topic. And the idea is that business problems can occur no matter what industry you're in. And so why not have a bit of fun with it and make it sort of apply to a fantasy kind of business? Now, does anybody have a fantasy location or sort of theme for this episode that we can kind of base our topic around?
Can we do the wardrobe, the Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe? So Narnia?
Great, we're doing Narnia. That's fantastic.
In Sunnyside Chook Shed replete with Eastern Brown snake.
We would not be bored there.
No, wardrobe is nice too.
So yeah, I think let's go for the more fantastical elements. So let's cast our mind to Narnia. And the problem that I had pre-written was that someone is struggling to get the team to gel well together. So I think that's going to be Aslan, the lion, in this context. So Aslan is struggling to get the team to gel well together in Narnia. Now, for people that haven't watched a concept sandbox before, we're going to have a totally different conversation right now, but we're going to keep relating it back to this problem. And so the topic that I chose for today is being bored and why it can be good. So we're going to be just sharing some different insights that we have around that. So I was wondering, does anybody want to kick us off with their insights on being bored?
I'm happy to go first. And I'm going to tell a story of when you kids were little. And one day, Allegra was probably 3 or 4. She was in the back of the car and she goes, "Mum, I'm bored." And I'm like, "Do you know what bored even means, Leggers?" And she's like, "No." And I explained what it was. And she was like, "No, I'm not that." And when you kids were growing up, if you thought you were bored and you came and actually told us as parents, we would go, "Here's a broomstick." And miraculously, we had no bored children. We also didn't get anyone using the broom either. They just disappeared outside to create something that was not so boring. So that was my story, Jess.
Well, I like that because I feel like it tells us how you can get the team to gel well together utilizing boredom. You can use it as a disincentive to go do something else that is sort of more team building in a way.
So, yeah, the idea, the things that we do as alleged responsible adults and parents of small humans in attempting to squash any suggestion of boredom. Because back in the day, we used to think that was a bad thing. If you were bored, it meant you were indolent, lazy, would affect your brain. You wouldn't grow up being clever and smart and all of those other things that as parents we wanted you to be because you were just sitting there being bored. Better thing for us to do would probably not be give you a broom, but give you the vacuum cleaner, because that's something that I hate even more.
So, question for you then. When you gave them the broom, and I get that they then ran outside and did whatever they did, but did they engage others within your brood to join in on the game?
Well, let's ask Jess, because he was one of said children that was at the farm usually when we were trying to hand out the broom.
I think you would take whatever you could get. So I think if that was the option, it definitely brought us together.
Yeah. Well, and that's sort of where I was going with that, if something happens and, okay, I've got to do something and the broom's the only choice, let's go out and do something, you'd engage the others too. So you're looking at that team building exercise or exercises just to so that you didn't have to do the broom.
It's an awesome insight. I hadn't actually thought of bringing that back into the team thing, but it's almost like that shared sense of terror brings us together.
Yeah.
A bit like one of the Friday the 13th movies, maybe? Maybe not, I'm not sure.
But we were the same as kids. I mean, being one of 5, and you'd say to Mum, "I'm bored," well, go outside and play. And it's like, yeah, but okay, so you'd then drag someone else with you. Chances are they might have been outside already doing stuff, but you'd go look for someone else to engage with, one of the other kids to play. So, yeah. And I mean, my kids do it too with, I'm bored, find something to do.
So if we sort of bring this back to the whole, we're stuck in a wardrobe, just to clarify, are we stuck in there with Aslan? Because that's just a little bit terrifying. I'm not sure which would be worse. I was just wondering whether, if we're sort of in this mythical team, like organisational team environment where we're in the wardrobe, is there an opportunity for us as a team leader or supervisor manager to celebrate the fact that a team member is bored by doing nothing to change their bored state, rather than acknowledging that it's a bad thing and you shouldn't be bored and reaching for the vacuum?
I read an article that talked about, so depending on the person, boredom can give them that opportunity to be more creative, more innovative, because they've got space for their brain. But also for some people, it increases things like anxiety and depression. So I think also if we're talking about the team, whether they're in the wardrobe or out in Narnia somewhere, it's also as if we put ourselves in Aslan's perspective, it's understanding our different people and how they react to boredom to maybe support those that feel a bit more anxious and maybe give them some things that they could do to, enjoy what they're doing better rather than being bored. But also for some who are a little bit more creative and innovative, maybe actually creating space for boredom so that they can actually be more creative and innovative. Anyway,
Well,
open thoughts on that one.
Isn't that, and I could be very wrong on this, but Google have spaces where people can go and rest and relax and blah, blah, blah. But isn't the view there that they go rest and relax, but come up with creative ideas that, then Google then steal and put their badge on it and make squillions of dollars while the person's still bored and sitting in the cupboard? I mean, sorry, that came across very negative, but wasn't meant to be. But yeah, isn't that the idea? Isn't that the idea of what Google has those spaces for? To go rest and be creative.
Yeah, and I suppose, again, given that study that I read, just being aware that won't work for everyone because we're all different. So, yeah, thinking about that too. But I totally agree. Like, a nap pod, for argument's sake, you could go in there, you have a bit of a nap, you wake up, and, you're going to come up often with some really interesting ideas. So it could be I don't know, because in Narnia it's snowing all the time. Maybe it's a snow cave where they get to go and some of the team members for Aslan get to actually just go in there and hang out and be bored.
Yeah, in the movie, wasn't it that one went in the cupboard and dragged the others in? So again, it's that, I'm just going to go exploring and have a look. And look, you guys come with and, suddenly we're not bored anymore because we're engaging with other people. Well, maybe not perceived as bored.
I was going to say, related to all of this is that I was looking up what boredom kind of is, and it's a signal for change in many ways. It's your brain saying that I don't have enough stimulus right now, so I need to change what I'm doing. So I think that could be something that you were talking about there, Danette, which is that some people may be bored and some people may not be, but they may need some different stimulus in this Narnia workspace. I also like that, John, you were saying that basically Google has worked out how to capitalize on people's sleeping time, which is pretty impressive. I never thought about it like that before, but you're kind of right.
No, just when you mentioned sleeping, so trying to work, do some research for this thing today, and came across a Bored and Brilliant it's a TED Talk. So there's a TED Talk around being bored, and she was discussing about how everyone is vying for your attention now. Everyone wants your attention because, you think you watch Netflix and as soon as one episode finishes, the next one's coming, it'll be up in 10 seconds because they want you to keep going. They don't want you to stop. And same with your feeds and your scrolls and everything else on all the other platforms. But apparently the CEO of Netflix once said, our biggest competitors are Facebook, YouTube, and sleep.
I was going to say sleep is sometimes what people do when they get bored. So they're like, I've got nothing else to do. I've scrolled enough. I'm feeling a bit tired, so I'll have a nap, which may actually then be a really good thing because they have pretty much a clear mind, which might, through the napping, give them some great ideas, like the napping pod thing that John was talking about.
How do you create a safe Narnia for a team where you've got different personalities, learning communication styles? So Susan's approach to boredom is going to be very different to Mr. Tumnus, because that's the only other character that I can remember, and I hope that that's actually a character from book. If it's not, please feel free to bombard our YouTube channel or not. But yeah, that idea of psychological safety. So how easy is it for me to sit in that bored space, particularly cognitively, if I am terrified, not of an eastern brown snake, but the white queen, turning me into just a 6 foot tall popsicle sort of thing because she's cranky. I'm not sure what the equivalent in today's organisation. Sorry, John?
You're not 6 foot.
I am if I'm standing in platform shoes. Thank you very much. Like everything else, the foot is shrinking. So
I wonder there, your question's a really good one. So, in today's world where everything is rush, and if we move that into Narnia and then bring it back, how do we actually recognise that actually boredom can bring some really good outcomes? And one of the things that our workplaces do at the moment, and the White Witch would also do, or the White Queen, is to want to be productive all the time rather than recognising that we have rhythms and honouring those rhythms to actually be more productive. And again, it's going to be different for different people or different animals.
And you know what else is kind of interesting about that is just even taking a step back. The concept of Narnia by C.S. Lewis probably came to him while he was bored. to sort of take it back to that level, like, that sort of level of creativity, I think, needs that boredom. And what's interesting also about Narnia itself is that it's a place where there's no internet. So boredom is much more common there. So in fact, people that if you were to go and work in Narnia, for example, you'd be more surrounded by people that are more commonly bored. So you'd probably learn some interesting techniques on how not to be bored as well. So it would change your relationship to being bored, I reckon.
I like that, Jess, because that is totally true. No internet. Yeah, because for most people nowadays in our world, they're scrolling as soon as they're bored. Or they're uncomfortable. It's not even that they're bored. They often don't get to bored because they're uncomfortable. So they'll pick up a device to distract rather than actually going, you know what, I'm just going to sit with this uncomfortable feeling, because on the other end, there might be some really interesting things. So I wonder how Aslan helps those in the team in Narnia be able to sit and rather than label it as something bad, so you're bored, there's something wrong with you, you should be working. It's like, okay, let's explore that emotion, that feeling, and let's see what we can create on the other side through Graham's point of creating that psychological safety for everyone to be different on how they experience it.
So does Aslan then basically just eat everybody's iPhone as a starting point? But I think Jez's, I love the phrase that Jez used about your relationship to boredom or relationship with boredom, because I think if we took a bunch of a team of human beings out of an organisation and deposited them in the fictional, even though we all know it's real, wardrobe, for argument's sake, which is where C.S. Lewis used to hide when his mother was running around with a broom saying, "Here, sweep the floor." That's where it all started. That's the rumour that I've just kicked off. But if we put a team into a space today in 2025, maybe 6, depending on when you're listening to this, and we take away their devices, how easy is it for them to get past being completely focused on the fact that I don't have my device? So I'm not distracted by no technology. I'm distracted. Sorry. I started saying that in English, and then I've since shifted into a pig Latin, which is not really working. I apologise for that, but I'll stop now. And John will carry on because he understood what I was trying to say.
But you're right. There have been times where I've left my phone at home and you've gone to work and you've gone, and the immediate panic. Or there's been a couple of times where I've lost all my contacts for whatever reason. And it's a panic of, oh my God, no one will be able to get hold of me. But you survive. Shit, I mean, we 3 of us grew up when we had phones that were attached by a cable to a wall. So once you walked out of the house, no one could get hold of you. So, yeah, can you put your device down for half an hour and not pick it up? And the podcast or the TED Talk I was talking about, it's how boredom can lead to your most brilliant ideas. She has an app, and she does see the irony of having an app for this, but Bored to Brilliant. And it has some challenges over the course of a week, and one being delete the app that most takes up your time. So everyone has one, whether it's a game of whatever the game is, because chances are it's a game. But can you cope with that? Can you do some time off your phone, off your device, off Facebook, off Instagram, off whatever it may be? And Jez, you talked about C.S. Lewis, whoever wrote the book, C.S. Lewis, and he was probably bored. Well, you think Frankenstein was written by a group of people who were stuck in a house for a weekend because of the rain and the weather. And Mary Shelley, I think she was the one that wrote it. Mary Shelley came up with Frankenstein. They created a competition amongst themselves, come up with the best story. They were trapped. They couldn't do anything. So, yeah.
So just going off John's thing, the other thing that happened, so if you think of when we were kids, I would certainly as a child go, let's have a look in what's in Grandma's farm granny, in my instance, wardrobe, and they would then become props for play with cousins and stuff like that. And so when I'm thinking of going through the wardrobe into Narnia, they not only had the props that would have sparked some ideas before they got to Narnia, but when they found the way into Narnia, there was also that element of surprise. And so I wonder too, if we're bored, but then we look for potentially, is there a prop or some sort of surprise we can bring to this thing? And to your point, John, about Mary Shelley and writing Frankenstein. This week we lost power here because there's massive storms. So I ended up going to bed at 6:30 because I had no idea when the power was going to come back on, and it went off about 3 or something. It came back on at 7:30. But what I found is it was like, okay, you can't cook food. So what's for dinner? What props can I find? So I end up having cheese and biscuits. Sent the kids a photo of what that looked like and stuff. So I wonder whether part of the brilliance of Narnia that we can bring to Boredom and help Aslan with his team, but also help others with their teams is, one, I love the idea about deleting the app that uses your most time, but also could we bring either a prop or an element of surprise that we could actually then use to create something brilliant out of the boredom. And here I'm going to go to Jez, because Jez, when he was young, loved this guy called Kyle McDonald who did the red paperclip, where he traded in 14 trades for a red paperclip. He ended up with a farmhouse in Saskatchewan. And I wonder whether, one prop might actually spark something out from that boredom, as you talked about in that TED Talk, John, to the brilliance. So I wonder what Aslan could do in terms of props.
Weren't the kids going through the wardrobe virtually his prop? Because they were the difference, and they led to huge change, and I think they killed the White Witch or whatever they did with her, but they were the ones that were introduced as a prop, and look at what they did.
So I love that idea. So what if the team members are props that they bring in a perspective that broadens people's minds to move from boredom to that brilliance?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and equality for fawns, I think, is really important. But I do like, so there's a lot of science behind the value we get from a creative sense of being around other people, because their ideas help spark. It doesn't even have to be their ideas, but sometimes just things that they say can spark ideas for us. That idea of people as props is a model. People as props. Jez, can you look after that one? Thanks. Great.
Well, I was just going to say, I think the whole conversation has been really interesting about how all of this has just been recontextualizing essentially potential energy that is being turned into boredom into sort of directing it, basically directing the focus and things like that. I wanted to actually bring in some examples of some things that were invented by boredom. So these are 2 examples that I found online that were created through boredom. So one was popsicles. A guy in Canada put sugar water in a container and left it out overnight with a stick in it. And he woke up the next day, an unexpected frost came through, and he ended up with a popsicle. So there you go. And how fun's a popsicle? So that's good. Great invention there.
I'm just wondering whether that's true, like the popsicle thing, because I still believe the White Witch or the White Queen created the first. Admittedly, it was either a Mr. Tumnus or a human, but, it doesn't matter. Your story is much better. I'll shut up now.
Well, look, I mean, they may have. That's a different episode. We can talk about a competitor entering the market in Narnia in a different concept sandbox. But the other one that I had was gunpowder, which was made by Chinese alchemists. But there was one strange version of this story I found online that said a chef came up with the ingredients while trying to come up with a new dish, which I find less believable because it involved sulfur. But I did like that idea that someone could be trying to cook something that could potentially kill you, and then it ended up being something that actually could kill you because it's gunpowder. So anyway, people, these are some ideas you can have if you are bored. Popsicles and gunpowder. And I also wanted to say I tried one thing. I know I went a bit above and beyond here, and I tried being bored for this podcast, okay? And I came up with this interesting new little mini meditation technique, okay? So actually something did come to me, which is pretty cool. So all you have to do is, it's very quick. You just close your eyes and then you blank out your mind, and then you just try and look in your mind to see where thoughts are coming from. And you can it's basically an instant meditation technique, and you can just also see the edge of your subconscious, which is kind of cool. So there you go, people. Go get bored. I'll bring this to some sort of mindfulness session in Narnia next quarter, and we'll see how that goes. Before my internet cuts out too badly, because for people that don't know, my internet's been quite bad, so I've edited out all that bad stuff. You will have no idea as a listener, but it's been pretty rough on the recording end. But yeah, sorry, Danette, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I'm curious, what actually did you find on the edge of your meditation and in your brain?
Well, I mean, That time I just had an image of Jeff Goldblum flash past for some reason. I think I was listening to a podcast with him on it the other day, so that's probably why. But yeah, nothing really stuck there because I didn't do it too long. What about you, Danette?
I just had an image of a fireplace, which I've been looking at images just for my vision board, and one of them is, what would I like a lounge room to look like? And fireplace is part of that. So, and I wonder, using the whole Narnia and stuff like that, is, could the fireplace be there where you feed in the boredom and then see what comes out of the flames on the other side? Could be a burnt chicken. Who knows?
Yeah, very interesting. Sorry, go ahead, Graham.
That's depressing. That's depressingly deep. I just got cats in a bag.
And you've let the cat out of the bag with that one. John, what about you? Did you get anything?
So now I just have cat in a bag. Thanks, Jess.
No, I had blank space. Totally blank.
A mindfulness master.
I learned something this week, which goes to John's thing, and let's share this with the viewers and ourselves. So Dr. D is a gentleman that works for a friend of ours, Faisal, in his business called Geneticare, and he does some extraordinary stuff. And one of the things he said is, if you're doing the meditation, at the end of it, you can rub your hands together, feel the warmth in your hands, and then cover your eyes. And it basically slows your brain down. So you actually just, instead of your eyes doing the rapid movement and that, they just slow, and it creates that space. So I reckon that's a technique to try when we're bored, to see what comes out of that space.
Yeah, wow. Love that, Danette. And thanks for that one. Graham, yeah, I was going to say, we're just about to head into the final bit here, but Graham, did you have anything you wanted to share on being bored or anything there?
No, nothing that we haven't really touched on already. I love the mini meditation thing. I think culturally we have been taught to view boredom as a bad thing, and we just need to change that story, change that mindset. How we do that within organisations, well, it's going to depend on so many things. I mean, we've talked about things like individual difference within the team, psychological safety, there's a whole bunch of other stuff attached to that. How do you disconnect people from their devices and enable them to not stay stuck mentally on, I don't have my device? I don't know, but I suspect that boredom, the state of boredom, arrives when I'm not focused on a single thing to the exclusion of everything else, if that sort of makes sense. So lots of opportunity there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that, Graham. And I think that leads us perfectly into sort of the final part of the conversation. So I might grab, John, did you have any final takeaways on today's conversation and being bored? And maybe we can also maybe all give our final thoughts on what Narnia, like, they should do with this information that we've just given them in this beautiful form of this podcast.
I think the fact that, as Danette, someone said earlier about them not having devices over there, or you said not having the internet. And if we can disconnect like they are there, you've got to fill in your time. Otherwise, you're going to be sleeping or sitting around, and no one seemed to be doing that there. You know, I go back to being a kid, and if you're sitting around at home, you'd be kicked out of the house to go do something. So suddenly you've got to find things to do, and as Graham said, find something to sole focus on, but you drag someone with you to engage with. The fact that our devices are there 24/7 and we get on them and we scroll, and how many times have you gone down a rabbit hole and, you come out an hour later going, where'd that hour go? Or where'd that time go? Embrace being bored. And as Graham said, I don't think society says boredom's a bad thing, and that's what I was brought up with, but no, because I think it allows your brain to make other connections of things that may have happened in the past, or, and draw out ideas, and it helps with creativity. So be bored.
Love that, John. Thank you so much for that. I will just go over to Graham. Graham, any final thoughts on the conversation and any tips for Narnia?
Other than just leveraging off John, and I think it might have been you and John talking earlier about the people being the props. I think for Aswan, he needs to think about how he can create a space for the team as they go through the wardrobe into Narnia, No Life, whatever it happens to be. How do I create a space that's safe for each of them and remove any immediate threats so that they feel comfortable enough, if that's the right way to go? I'm not sure whether you can feel bored if you're terrified of being eaten by, a saber-toothed tiger or something. And please, for those of you listening, yes, I know there were no saber-toothed tigers in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. It was a metaphor. I'm done. I'm bored with this conversation now.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that, Graham. And Jeanette, any final thoughts on today's being bored conversation and tips for Aslan?
So I love the idea of a digital detox. So I think as we enter the wardrobe to go to Narnia, we should think about deliberately being intentional about leaving devices behind. And then for Aslan in Narnia to bring people together, direct that energy and move, as you said, from that TED Talk that John was sharing, from boredom to brilliance. So we focused that energy, which you talked about, to actually help everyone in Narnia come up with ideas that, because they're working with others, they couldn't have come up with for themselves. And then they start experimenting to see which are going to work and which won't. And neither are failures. They're just ways of using boredom to actually create new, innovative ways of moving forward. So no devices and connect with others. Thanks, Jess. Great topic.
I love that, Danette. It's almost like you could call a space without phones. You could be like, we're going into the wardrobe now to do some ideas work. I wanted to do something. This is going to test the very limits of our technology here, because I've generated some AI images of what Narnia could look like in this new system, but my internet has been quite bad. So we're just going to have to believe that this is possible, everybody. We're all going to step into the wardrobe together here and see how we go. Feel free to let me know what you think of these. I've got a couple of images for us to see.
Hey!
Oh, there it is. Oh, I love that, Jez. It's like a Narnia nap pod.
Mm-hmm.
This is
So
Google and Narnia.
That's one.
That's awesome.
So they actually, Google bought Narnia, Alphabet bought Narnia last week. This is a real thing.
Wow. Here's
that.
Here's Mr. Tumnus in the nap pod here, so you can have a little look here. Not very fawn-like. And then I also wanted to get an image of the team in Narnia celebrating under what could be like a sort of corporate hangout area. So anyway.
I love it.
No,
That's gorgeous, Tess.
Above and
Well
beyond.
done.
I'm glad.
Love that you're using tech for that.
I'm glad. Well, I think we're using the very limitations of my computer's technology there, Danette. So everybody, thank you for sharing and enjoying the Magical Learning Podcast. We have managed to get through it here today, despite technological challenges, but we've all managed very well. I want to thank you all so much for being great on this podcast. You've all managed very well, despite my technology not being great. To everybody that's been listening and sharing, thank you all so much. Our podcast has been growing. We're now over 3,000 subscribers on YouTube. So thank you, everybody that's been watching and sharing. Hope you enjoy this one. And as always, everybody, have a magical week.